In 1990, a young South African boy used to visit his cousin's house and play Sega Mega Drive. This was an amazing experience, but the cartridges and the technology was just too expensive in this country. And for a lot of people, I think, who are interested in this particular device, that is the case, that they lived in an outlying area, Nintendo was out of reach, and so Sega was the big thing, and even that was too expensive. Now, 2023, we have a company like Anbernic making this. The Anbernic Arc, for a lot of people in the world, is going to be a culmination of years of pining for something and finally being able to have it in your hands. And I have it in high regard watching other reviewers and having tested it. Unfortunately, I don't have, I just brought up the Sega Mega Drive controller on my laptop just to check what my experience was when it was 1989 this thing came out. What was it like holding that thing? And to be honest, I can't remember. But I have a feeling this is pretty damn close. And if you watch someone like Retro Tech Dad, he compares it quite carefully and painstakingly and basically comes to the conclusion that it's pretty damn good, and if not better in some regards. So let's take a look. I don't always do sort of first look. I don't have the time to do first look and then, 2 months later on devices. So I have to gauge whether devices are popular or whether they mean something to me and that kind of thing. And this is definitely one of those devices. It falls in both those categories. It's a win-win because this is going to be popular and it's a device that I care deeply about. I now have it launched in the Linux side of things. Anbernic sent me this device, and this is the device that I wanted. I wanted this one that looks like the Sega Mega Drive with the purple blue accents. It just is stunning. Now let's jump right into the buttons and ergonomics and all that kind of thing. Now these buttons, even though they do protrude a lot, what I'll show you now is that the travel, you've got just a decent amount of travel, and then I'm going to switch the processing on my audio. Just listen to the button sound. It's a very satisfying, dull click. It's not a click, it's a switch, like a tuk tuk, and it's very satisfying. It really feels good, and it feels like a new retro device. It feels like something that's new, but is made from something that was old. That's the kind of vibe you get. Moving over to the screen is a really good resolution. I haven't double checked this, but I'm pretty sure this is the screen that you get in the RG405M and the RG405V. They have not over-sharpened the Android on this. So, yes. Now, the D-pad is something to behold. Aish from Retro Handles said he's completely sold on these. He said he wasn't a Sega fan, but once he started on this D-pad, he's like, he just wants it on everything. So the way it works is you've got a switch here. Again, that lovely dull thud as you press into it. Let's just listen to that. Very nice. And then in the center is a pivot. So it pivots like this. And that is just fantastic for fighting games. And then obviously the 3-button setup, there are some fighting games that utilize that. Arcade, Sega, Sega Saturn, which doesn't play too well on here, but you can utilize those 3-button games to really get a wonderful experience on here. The shoulder buttons, so I want to quickly show you something. Firstly, okay, so I'm opening a PSP game, which is not ideal for the system, but it does play some PSP games. So what you'll see is that they've mapped the X button to here, the circle button to here, the square button to here, and the triangle button to there, so sort of an Xbox layout. And then on some of the games, you'll get a joystick map where this is up, this is down, this is left, and this is right. So you can kind of like hack the device to have a joystick to play some PSP games. But like I said, this is not a PSP device, and so it's kind of a happy medium because it's not the perfect PSP gameplay. So you can kind of get by with the keys on some PSP games, which kind of limits your options with PSP even more. But it's a compromise. This is definitely a polarizing device because it has no joysticks. It's got a very specific D-pad, but that is the beauty of it, So what I want to illustrate is how good these shoulder buttons feel on a game like this that relies on the shoulder buttons. this game, you have to rock the screen back and forth like this. So what I'm trying to illustrate there is that these shoulder buttons feel so good. And what I liken them to is, and they, in terms of digital press shoulder buttons, so they're not analog buttons, they're just literally just a button. One of the nicest feeling shoulder buttons that I've experienced on a device is the RG353P. And this has very similar design shoulder buttons. If you look here, it's even got this little lip, exactly the same lip. And when you pair this device to stuff, it registers as an RG353P. So it's literally a 353P with new software, and it's missing analog sticks, and it has extra 2 buttons. But therein lies one of the issues with this device, is it is massive. So let's quickly, by the way, this is the official Anbernic case, and it really is nice. They've started to put a little molding inside for their devices. And I actually was running around today with the Anbernic in this case, and it feels really good. So let's do a quick size comparison. We'll start with the Retroid Pocket Flip. This is the flip with grip. Nobody got my Dr. Seuss reference in my previous video with the Retroid Pocket Flip. You've still got an extra bulge here, even with the grip on. Without the grip, this bulge really does add a lot. But then the Flip is quite a thick device. You're looking at a fair amount of heft over and above the Flip's width. Oh, it's close, but this is still fatter. Then let's go to, I haven't got a Steam Deck yet. Let's go to the biggest device I own, which is the PowerKitty X55. Now, the PowerKitty X55 is the biggest and most ergonomic device I own. So it's a little bit longer, but this thing still drops much lower. And we've got the bulge here makes the X55 a little bit fatter. But this thing has this little ridge here, so it's got like a grip. So you hold it like that, and then you put your fingers there. And I would say that this is one of the most ergonomic devices that have come through my studio since I've started doing this. Up there with the X55, it really is exceptional. And then in comparison to something that's quite small, the Miyoo Mini Plus is kind of the quintessential small device. Like the Miyoo Mini, it was very, very small. This is like the perfect compromise kind of a device. And we're looking at, it's just gigantic. That is a huge device compared to the Miyoo Mini Plus. Anyway, just a quick size comparison. Now, firmware, this is just a first look. So this is my impressions and how I've been feeling about this device playing it. And my spoiler alert for the in-depth review is that I really think you should just get the Linux device. The Linux one is in the post at the moment, but if you are like me and you really want this black one, so they were sneaky because they know that this is probably the one that most people are going to want, this color scheme. And so, you can only get this with the dual boot. With the dual boot, what you're getting is some emulators are going to work better on Android. For instance, Drastic works a lot better on Android because you're going to get to use the touch screen and all that sort of thing. Drastic is just a nicer emulator on Android, in my opinion. And there's a few other games that are probably going to play better on Android than on Linux. So if you are that kind of a tinkerer, then the dual boot definitely is worth it. But by and large, I think the Linux is going to be the one to go for because Android have really done an excellent job developing a Linux system. So this, I'm guessing, is just emulation station, but because of the menu system, it kind of gives it away that it's possibly emulation station. I think Aish from Retro Handout said it might be Batusira. I'm not sure, but this looks like emulation station to me. And then they've given it an Onion OS look on the front end. So this is a lot like Onion OS on the Miyoo Mini Plus. One of the weird quirks with the Linux-based system is that you've got emulators. So if you are new to emulation, you've got RetroArch that handles a lot and handles all of the lower end systems. But as soon as you get into like Sega Saturn, even sometimes PS1 is better using a standalone emulator. You're going to find that standalone emulators work better on the higher end systems such as Sega Saturn, a PlayStation Portable. They've obviously got DS here, which is going to work better here than on RetroArch, Nintendo 64, Naomi, Sega Dreamcast. All those are on independent emulators. So what they've done is they've categorized the games by emulators, which is kind of confusing because not everyone knows that RetroArch's lower end systems and then higher end systems are emulators, because technically RetroArch is a piece of software that handles emulators. So you see what I mean? Just trying to explain it is confusing. So anyway, so your lower end systems are under RetroArch, your higher end systems are under emulators. So that's kind of how they've structured it. You can put your ports here with Portmaster. They've got a setup app. I'm guessing this is going to grow. They have a recents tab, which I like because that's the easiest. Just to go back, well, especially reviewing. It's nice to go back to see, which games have I tested? You can obviously see that I've gone through a bunch of fighting games. The recents is nice. Then you can also add your favorites. I'm trying to create a Sega playlist here. So I've got Mortal Kombat, Streets of Rage, and I'm slowly going to build that up. And then Start will bring up your main menu with all your goodies. This thing does do streaming, apparently, which I haven't tested yet. Obviously Wi-Fi, so it does scrape your artwork. That's an important thing that people want to know. You can connect Bluetooth controllers to here, and it's got an HDMI out port. That's something that I haven't mentioned yet. That is important to note. HDMI out, Anbernic are stingy with that, so this device has this. So what's nice is that I think outlying areas, people not in the US are going to want this device, and it's going to be a one and done device for you, like in terms of you're just going to want this device to do everything, and it's going to be able to do almost everything apart from the fact of with higher end systems, if you need joysticks, it hasn't got them. The only downside with Linux is the fact that you can't pair Bluetooth headphones with Linux. I wonder, I'm not really sure why. I must have something to do with drivers or what have you, but that is the case. Then, if you want to switch so with Linux, you have to go quit and you shut down system, say yes. So in the past, you had to eject the SD card with the Linux firmware, and then it would open in Android. But now all you need to do is press the F button and the power button, and it should open in Android. Okay, so now we're in Android. One of the nice things about Anbernic is they have developed this where you just go normal, game mode, go back, and here it is. And with the games card that came included with this, I have not had to do much setup. I made a few notes here of some setup things which I'll put in the long format video of this device. So there were some minor setup things, but mostly, I think every now and again I had issues with the mapping of the 6 buttons. But mostly things were running nicely. Yes, for Sega Genesis, I struggled. It's a new emulator that I've never dealt with, or should I say an old emulator that they're now using because of the 6 buttons. And I struggled a little bit to do the 6-button setup. Eventually figured that out, so that's fine. But other than that, you literally just swipe down, disable game mode, and you're back in business. The only downside with this Android is that it doesn't have Google Play services on it. I say it's a downside, but the thing is, in the past, everyone made a big hoo-ha about the RG505 not having Google Play services, but it also does hamper performance, and that, I don't know if that was Android's motivation. I know it's also difficulty getting licensing sometimes, but it does improve the performance. So I've got the Aurora App Store on here. What else did I do? See, I put YouTube on here. YouTube's not going to work. So if you're someone who wants an Android device to do the other Android things, like watch something on YouTube, put your Netflix on, which I'm not sure you'll be able to do, but those things won't work. Anything that you can download an independent APK, an independent app that you can download and install on Android without Google Play services, then you can do that. But anything outside of that cannot be done. So it will cause some issues along the line. I know, for instance, Daijisho I was able to set up. So Daijisho is my favorite front end. I know TechDweeb loves his Dig. I just find it confusing. Maybe he needs to sit me down and show me how to use it one day. But anyway, I like Daijisho. I managed to download it without Google Play services, and so I've got that set up and it looks great. I have Daijisho set up on there, and I'm going to tinker around and get that going. And that is very nice. On the screen and on this system, Daijisho and Android does work really nicely. So if you are willing to spend the money, it is worth it. I do think it is worth it. But at the end of the day, my recommendation is just go for the Linux version. It's cheaper. The other thing that I have noted is that it does have Wi-Fi interference. In the past, Anbernic would just not put Wi-Fi into the device. They've put Wi-Fi in the device. I haven't seen any warnings about Wi-Fi interference, but but there is Wi-Fi interference here. So if it bugs you, just switch the Wi-Fi off. At least you have it for art scraping. You can switch it off if it's irritating you. So that is my final look. The reason I made this is because I think people are there wondering, should I buy it? And maybe I'm the only person they trust on YouTube to make a decision. And I just wanted to put this out there to, the key points, the things that I've mentioned in this video that might be an issue for you. Should you go for Android, Linux? There is a bit of Wi-Fi interference. I don't think it's the end of the world. It is a little bit big, but therein lies the secret of how comfy and nice it is to hold in your hand. And it doesn't have joysticks, so you are making a compromise on this device. If you don't go into this with that knowledge, you are going to be disappointed. But they've also included things like HDMI output, so you can use this as a console. So if you want to use this as a Sega Genesis console, just like super retro, this thing with, by the 8-bit do Sega controller, you are just going to be the happiest kid in town.